Good afternoon, wherever you happen to be on this incredible planet that we call Earth, and indeed that we have no choice but to call home. You are currently on a live afternoon game drive here in the wilds of the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Park. 8 million acres of magnificent and untrammeled wilderness wonderland, and we're on a little section on the western end, about 3,500 to 4,000 acres, called Djuma, and just to the west of us, a little piece called Arathusa. Now, my name is James Hendry, in case you were wondering, and on camera, filming me as I perform what is, well, something of a bush stunt, I suppose, is Brian. And Brian has enough clothing to see him through a prolonged expedition to the Arctic. This is because the temperature is varying between fairly warm, around about 22 or 23 degrees Celsius, probably down to about 17 degrees Celsius, depending on what the rain's doing and what the wind is doing. That means it's about 63 degrees Fahrenheit and possibly pushing up to about 73, I think. The temperature of Fahrenheit is still a deeply confusing thing to me, as it is to most of us who've moved into the 20th century. Now, on the other vehicle today we have Scott and Jean-Dre. They will be going to try and relocate those two enormous, magnificent male lions that he had this morning, and I am, apart from sort of standing up here performing something of a showing off stunt, I'm trying to see if I can't spot the Nkuhuma Pride, or the remnants thereof, from here. Now, they were around this area apparently this morning. There were tracks. We didn't find them, and I'm rather hoping I'll be able to find those 3 lionesses who were seen chasing the buffalo yesterday evening. Please remember, this is a live afternoon game drive safari, wherever you happen to be in the world, and whatever time it is where you are. Please, we do love to hear from you. If you would like to talk to us on the Twitter, tweet away happily like a red-breasted canary, hashtag Safari Live. A red-breasted canary, of course, doesn't occur here. I've made that up. I don't know why, but there it is. Then if you're on the email, questions@WildEarthTV, and we would love to hear from you. Give us your comments, give us your questions, talking about the lions and the great things that are going on with them. And so please send us your theories and your thoughts. We do love to hear from you. Last thing before I try and decamp from this scotia tree, a weeping boerbean, is to say that in the control room today we have got Nikki Alston and Tara Dales, and they will be pushing the buttons and twiddling the knobs, and of course Eugene is off trying to fix the technical difficulties that mercifully have not plagued us today. Right, Brian, I'm going to now try and climb out of this tree in an elegant fashion. Feel free to pan away from me at your earliest convenience.
I'm tight on you, James, I'm tight.
Alternatively, just watch. And should you hear a scream, come and help me. One day that's going to go wrong. Mercifully it wasn't today. Right, here we go. Wasn't that athletic, Brian?
That was incredible.
Not bad for a 74-year-old man, is it? Okay. Right, we're going to just drive off onto the road out here and see if we can't pick up some tracks of those lions. As you can possibly see, the sky is starting to spit upon us slightly. Here we go. So, as we continue to wonder what's going on with the lions, some very clever comments from everybody this morning, that apparently those were the Seleti males. It was the Seleti males that we saw this morning. I don't know where they come from or what they're doing here, but they were marking territory, which of course is very odd indeed. Sorry, we don't have Tara in final control. It is Louise. I didn't mean to cast aspersions on her. Hello, Louise. Nice to have you with us. So we're just going to do a couple of loops around the blocks here, see if we can't find some tracks, and then we'll reassess from that point. I would also be very much appreciative of those of you who saw those lions being harassed last night at the waterhole on the Djuma dam cam. If you could perhaps tell us who was harassing them. Was it the 3 females or was it those 2 males that we saw today? I know you did give us an update about the 2 males, and that eventually led to us finding them, so thank you very much for that. But if you could tell us perhaps about the 3, or what was chasing the buffalo when they came to the dam yesterday, that would be great. Right. I do believe also you're going to lose a little bit of picture now as Brian cleans off the spots of rain. And Donna, thank you for your question about whether or not I'm going to build a tree house. Donna, I am not a practical man. Were I to build a tree house, I would almost certainly fall out of it and die on my first night. So I think that I will not be building a tree house. I might get someone else to do it for me. Jamie, I know, is extremely practical with her hands, so I might ask her to do it. So I'm going to hand you over to Spot, who, well, while he is more impressive than me, he's looking at something even more impressive than he. So I'll see you just now, hopefully with some good news.
Welcome on board, everyone, and I'm sure you've got off to an entertaining start with James. We've been lucky enough to relocate on these 2 large male lions that we found this morning, and as you can see, one of them is fast asleep. The other one, which is a little bit more nervous of the vehicles, is lying up in a very thick bush where Jean-Ray is pointing the camera now, and you can maybe make out a caramel blur within that thick vegetation. And thanks very much to Chris Rowe Cropper and others who sent through updates and info on these males. We weren't exactly sure who they were, and they are believed to be the Seletis males. We sadly didn't get a close enough look at them this morning, but if we do get to see them yawning a little bit later, one of them has got a broken bottom left canine. So that's an update which will help us confirm that it is in fact them, but it certainly does make sense in terms of the area that they move in, and that is further north of us in the Manyaleti Reserve, where they spend more time typically. And we also got some updates through from Diane, so thanks very much Chris, Diane, and others that did send through those updates. As you can see, we parked in a little bit precarious spot here. There was no other way of us getting a visual other than to creep down into this little thicket, and at least we do have a view of them now. It'll be interesting to see how long they sleep for. I'm feeling confident they're going to get up a little bit earlier than we usually see the lion because of a couple of reasons. They're quite empty-bellied, so I think food and hunger will drive them to move quickly, and also this cool weather is very suited to the big cats. They don't like moving around when it's very hot, so this cool drizzly weather will be great. And the third very important factor is that they're kind of in no man's land here. They're going to be a little bit more nervous, a little bit more anxious. They're not too sure of this territory. I've never seen them here before. It's not to say they haven't been here, but interestingly this morning they were vocalizing at least once here on Djuma, and that was seen at the Djuma waterhole at around 5:15, and it helped us to eventually track them down in this area not far from the Djuma waterhole. On top of the vocalizations, which is a clear communication from them to other lions that they are not scared of being in this new area, they were also scent marking. So they're definitely coming here with purpose and with meaning, and they're not flying below the radar as male lions who are not bold and confident would sometimes do. Now, as I said, the one individual is a little bit nervous. The one that's closer to us here has got a distinctive limp, and it seems like the muscles on his back left leg aren't quite as big as they should, so I'm not sure exactly what injury would have caused this slight breakdown in muscle mass. And I'm sure when we do get to see him move for the first time after he's been lying down, he'll probably limp. But as he continues to move a little bit more, the wound, as very often it happens with the wild animals out here, begins to kind of warm up, and then he should be pacing along with very little evidence of the injury. But that's something we can expect to see a little bit later. They're incredibly majestic males, and I think they're probably a little bit younger than the Matimba males. They certainly look a little bit younger, in slightly better condition, and their manes are dark and beautiful. And the other individual, who we can't see now but we will see later, has these incredibly piercing eyes, and he was the first one that we spent time with and looked at, and it was quite bone chilling as he lay flattened in the grass staring us down. And I just mentioned that I think they're a little bit younger than the Matimba males, and Carla's just asked to know exactly how old they are, and thanks to an update from Diane, Carla, I can provide you with this information. So thank you, Diane, for this information. Apparently they were born in 2007, so that would put them at around 8 years old, which is a rough guess that I did come up with. I said they were probably 7, 8 or 9. The Matimba males are a little bit older than that, and they're certainly showing signs of their age, whereas these guys, you could say, are in their prime. Now it'll be interesting to know what exactly caused them to all of a sudden move from their current territory into this area, but they've possibly got wind of a shift and a change. Their hearing and senses are far better than ours, so they've probably heard the commotion unfolding here between the Birmingham males and the Matimba males, and I've probably thought it might be worth moving into this area to try and also get involved in the action and try and acquire some more real estate. And all male animals will try, especially the territorial animals like lion and leopard, will continually try and increase their territory, and that will be their genetic drive to try and procreate with as many females as possible, and the more land they have, the more prides of lioness they will be able to service. You may have heard the cry of a fish eagle ring out a little bit earlier. Oh, wonderful. I think Jean may miraculously, oh no, well, the lion just popped its head up, so we're going to stay on the line, but the fish eagle was floating around above us, and there it calls again. And isn't he such a beautiful big male, holding his head up into the wind. Oh, big yawn. Now, even though some of you feel strongly that this could be the Seletis males, and I'm happy to jump on board with that theory for the time being, we haven't got any 100% confirmation that this is necessarily the case, and Deb in Ohio is still querying that fact, and she's hoping that it's the two other members of the Matimba coalition. So two Matimba males who've been spending time to the north of us in the Manyeleti, and I threw out a theory this morning that possibly they have come back to help their old coalition members retain their territory, and wouldn't that be an incredible story if it is in fact the case? Deb, it's certainly not cast in stone that these are the Seletis males, so there certainly is a chance, and once we get some more footage of them and more pictures, we'll be able to send them out to the various guides and get them to give their opinions. We've thankfully got friends surrounding us in wilderness areas here, so we will be able to work out in a bit of time whether these are in fact the Seletis or the Matimbas. Either way though, whether it's the Madimbas or the Seletis, the bottom line is that two big males that ordinarily don't spend time here are coming here on a mission. And we can certainly expect to see things get spiced up here in an already chaotic scenario regarding the lions and their movements. It'll be interesting to know if these males have spent much time with the Nkuhuma pride, which is another thing that we need to think about and discuss, as let's hope that these guys don't cause any trouble with those lioness, the remaining members of that pride. The junior will certainly also be at risk if he comes across them. And Colleen in Virginia Beach has just asked a question on that fact, what will happen if Junior comes across these big old boys. And Colleen, like I said, I don't think that it'll be a good thing for him if he comes across them. If he were to come across younger males, I think it would be a lot more likely that he would try and, after an initial scrap, try and kiss and make up and form a coalition. But these guys, I think, are established and wouldn't be hugely interested in acquiring a youngster like Junior. That's as far as I think, and you'll probably find their initial reaction is to attack. And there is a small chance that after a small skirmish that they could resolve things with him, but the initial thing when they see another male lion will either be to flee if they don't feel confident, or to attack. And in their case, they're certainly in a very powerful position. Their manes are far larger than theirs. They're 2.5 times the age of him, so their experience is far greater than his. And what's important about their manes, back to that, is that it's essentially a massive helmet, and they have their manes for aesthetic reasons, but even a male lion without a mane would still be allowed to mate with lioness. So it's not a prerequisite for the lioness to see a big beautiful mane and then be more inclined to mate with the male. That mane is there to serve as protection for the male lions who live a highly violent and aggressive lifestyle. And Junior's mane is nowhere near the size of theirs, so he would be in serious trouble for a number of reasons if they got a hold of him. He's probably not too far from here. They were last seen last night on Sibambili, and he actually had a small buffalo calf that we presume he killed himself. And interestingly, there was one other young lioness with him, and when another lioness from the Nkuhuma pride rejoined up with them, the lioness got a fright and ran away. So there was a bit of confusion between those three Nkuhuma pride members, and they were probably about 2 miles west of where we are now. I think the other 3 members could still be on Djuma, according to the tracks that I was following up this morning. Initially, when we were in a wild hunt for these guys, we also had some tracks of the Nkuhuma pride. So I'm hoping James has a little bit of luck scratching around Treehouse Dam, Twin Dams, that area. That's where I feel that they could be hiding out. So the Nkuhumas are nearby, and they will be wanting to reunite as a pride of 6. They're currently split up into 2 different groups of 3. So interesting stuff will happen there. Also, there was no confirmation of where exactly the Birmingham boys were this morning, and that would be the ultimate showdown. If we got to see the 5 of them confront these 2 boys, what would happen? It's impossible to say. The Madimbas kind of made way for the Birmingham males, but these guys might not do the same thing, and there could be an almighty battle that breaks loose. And for that reason, just to keep you all updated, I'm not sure if James has touched on it, but the plans for this evening, because there is so much potential excitement, is that we will keep one vehicle with the lion, and that'll be us for as long as we can. And depending on the weather and what's going on with the lion, we may still do the fireside chat with James and Jamie and Brent, and it'll be something different, something we haven't done before. Some of the crew at the fire, some of us out here in the field, but it's just something to think about. I also must say I am concerned with this weather. The clouds around us are very, very dark, and sadly the majority of the dark clouds are right behind the vehicle, but this gloomy weather could mean we have some rain issues, which would be terrible timing, especially because there's such good potential action that could unfold with these males later. If nothing serious happens in terms of interactions and confrontations with this coalition and the other lions in the area, one thing that we can hope to see and hear is them roaring. And the fact that they roared this morning means that there's a strong likelihood that they could roar again this evening. They're not scared in this area. They're willing to voice themselves and let all the other lions know that they are here. And that's a very interesting move, and I was very surprised by that. When I heard the roars earlier this morning, I thought it must be the Birmingham boys or the Matimbas, and then when we found them, it was a very, very pleasant surprise. Oh, wonderful. That's a white-crested helmet shrike that Jean-Andre spotted. It was a brief glimpse of them, and it's just so thick in this little area where we are that it was difficult to see. But what I can do is pull out my book and get that ready and show you a little bit later a closer view of that bird. It's a very pretty little bird, and it's been quite a while since I've managed to show them to you, so it could be a new bird for some of your bird lists, for some of the newer viewers. I'm just going to get a hold of James quickly and give him a few more updates as to where I think these lions are. Just need to wait for the chatter on the Game Drive channel to calm down. Wait our turn. There we go. Go ahead, James. I would suggest walking north up Weaver's Nest from Savage's Track Elephant Skull, and trying to work out whether they go east or west off the road. They were heading south before that junction. So just giving James the scoop on what I think he should do in terms of following up on the tracks that we had of, in all likelihood, the 3 in Kuhuma lioness earlier. And it's really tricky business tracking at the moment. The overcast weather doesn't help, and the fact that we've had these recent rains means the ground is solidified hugely compared to the dry and dusty conditions we were experiencing before the rains during our dry winter months. And our tracking is going to get harder and harder as the summer unfolds, and we've got a little bit lazy, and our eyes have got used to the easy tracking conditions, and now we need to start working on our skills again. Well, I've just got another interesting update, and this is from John, so thank you so much for sending this through. And John's mentioned that these 2 Seletis males could have been pushed out by a coalition called the Giraffe males, and that's a coalition of 5, or possibly 2 of the Skybed males. Now, I've heard of the Skybed coalition. Apparently there's 9 youngsters that have all teamed up together. They will in all likelihood disband into smaller portions and smaller coalitions, as 9 lions in one place doesn't really make sense. And often with the bigger coalitions, once they have established dominance in an area, they'll fragment into different kind of groups, and that way they can patrol this massive territory more effectively. So they're still business partners, but they need to split up because basically their land has got too big to patrol with all of them being together at the same time. Now that's really interesting stuff. It's occurring north of us in the Magnoleti, and maybe these guys have just got too much pressure up there, that they're being forced into this area where they stand a bigger chance, or they feel that maybe it's worth trying their luck here because there's too much competition further to the north, and that's certainly possible, and that will obviously have a big impact on now what happens with the Birmingham males. They've obviously also been chased from that same area, also the Magnoleti, and also come south in search of a safer area, or an area where they are more likely to establish a territory. And aren't we lucky that we've now got these extra 2 males coming in to really make the animals vie for this position. We've still got 2 males, the Matimba males, who could come back and try and reclaim their territory. The male's just popped his head up again. I'm just going to ask everyone to tell his guests to keep their voice down, because they're making a little bit of a racket and I don't think they realize how close they are. If you could please ask your Mlungus to keep their voices down, is Ngala Chava. And I don't blame them though. The excitement of seeing lions for the first time must really get their hearts pumping, and obviously realize they're getting closer to the action here. So while we wait for these lions to start showing us a little bit more action and movement, we are going to run through many of the likely theories or outcomes of what may happen. And Kelly is now interested to know if this is in fact the 2 Matimba males, and they joined up with the older 2 males that we usually see here. What would happen with the lioness prides? What would they do? Would they remain split up, or would they join up together? And it's a tricky one to say, Kelly, but I would assume that the lioness will do whatever they would have been planning to do, regardless of what the males are doing in the area. The males will obviously have an impact whilst establishing the territory, and that could cause some prides to split up. But it's more likely for me that the lioness will only split up when they are having domestic issues between their own pride members, and whether it's 2 males or 4 males that are dominant over their area, I don't think it's going to impact hugely on their plans and movements. And the reason for that is that only 1 male out of a coalition will get to do the mating, and therefore I think it's not likely that we expect huge changes in the pride dynamics as these males, if they are the Matimbas, join up and re-establish dominance in this area. It's very tricky to tell though, and each pride takeover and coalition takeover, even if research has been done throughout Africa on many different prides, which it has, the scenarios and outcomes will always be different. And even though there may be general trends, it's not to say that that is the way it will play out time after time. Beautiful shots of his paw there, and you can clearly see those 3 lobes. Now, I touched on the fact that these lions are a little bit nervous, or at least one of the 2 of them are. and it's not the one that's closer to us. When we actually arrived here, the one that's a little bit more nervous got up and lay a few meters away in the thick bush. And Joyce is interested to know, why would they be nervous but still be happy to scent mark and vocalize this morning? And I touched on this morning, Joyce. Basically, they are nervous of us as humans, but they're not nervous of the other lions in this area. So it's two different things that we are kind of explaining here, or discussing their nerves of us as humans on these open vehicles versus their fear of other lion in the area. And they're clearly a lot more bold with regards to their thoughts of the other lion as they are compared to us, and that's why we've seen them a little bit nervous of us. And the reason for that is quite simple, Joyce. We've been hugely spoilt in this area, and that goes for the Sabi Sands as an entirety and other wilderness destinations in Africa. Basically, because people have been coming here for many, many years, taking photographic safaris, not hunting, not harming the animals, over time, parents have been habituated and shown by the humans that we don't pose any threat to these animals, and then they pass on these relaxed and habituated tendencies to young cubs. And as cubs are born and are tiny little furballs, we will continue to view them, and they will again become relaxed with us, and that will get passed from generation to generation. In other areas of Africa, not far from here in the Manyeleti Reserve, the road network is not nearly as dense as it is here in the Sabi Sands, so animals can escape humans for days on end, weeks on end, months on end, and therefore not have that habituation process. Even though there are the odd going drive vehicle driving around there, they don't spend nearly as much time as the animals as we do here in the Sabi Sands, and that is why we are seeing this slightly different behavior. I quite like it actually, and it was a very pleasant surprise to see some very nervous lions this morning. When we got that first view of him, I was really concerned that he may charge the vehicle, but thankfully we stopped further enough away that he did feel safe, but he had himself flattened in the grass, staring very intently through us. So we can put that down simply to habituation. And basically, just to sum things up, if you went into a wilderness area in Africa where lions had never seen humans before, and you either walked up to that lion or drove up to it, it would run for its life probably before you even got to see the thing. So typically, the wilder the lion is, the less likely it is to allow you to get close to it in a vehicle and or even on foot. And Sarah in Ohio has also touched on that question, and she's now pointed out something a little bit different, and that is that one male is a little bit nervous and the other isn't. And I should have touched on that, so thank you very much, Sarah, for reminding me to do so by sending your question through. And again, just like humans, animals are different, and maybe one of these lions is just a little bit more nervous than the other. We're not sure what could have caused that, but what we can do is we can think of Djuma and Quarantine, two male leopards who are brothers. They would have in all likelihood been exposed to exactly the same behavior from us as humans. Yet Quarantine appeared to be far more relaxed in general than Djuma. So two brothers of the same age, the same litter, exposed to the same thing day in and day out, yet very apparent and notable differences in their personalities, you could say. And I think that's what can be attributed to this male's slightly nervous behavior. Not the one we're looking at, his friend who's hiding in the thick bush. Like I said a bit earlier, a great shot of this individual's back pad of his paw. And often we explain to you that the cats will have 3 lobes on their back pad, and you can see very clearly there the 3 individual bumps at the base of that pad, and that will be applicable to leopard, cheetah, all the cat-like animals. Whereas the dogs and the hyenas will have only 2 lobes on that back pad. So when you are out tracking, that's something to look for. And I guess even if you take your dogs for a walk on the beach, you'll clearly notice the 2 back pads, and some of you with cats, I'm sure, have got the little 3-lobed paw prints littered around your house every now and then. So I mentioned earlier, and maybe I didn't term it correctly, that these lions aren't scared of the Birmingham males, and that's not necessarily the case. And Janet in Idaho is interested to know my thoughts on why they wouldn't be scared, or why they would be scared of them. The fact of them coming into this area, vocalizing and scent marking, tells me that they're willing to confront or test the area. They're not flying below the radar just hoping to find a buffalo to feed on and then slink out and just carry on existing like that. They want to come in here, test the waters. Now, whether they come across the Birmingham males, I mean, this will be the only way to find out. I reckon that is the only way to be sure we'll know whether they're going to run from them or whether they're going to attack them. But they are certainly, once just picked up his head, he's lifting it up into the wind, smelling the air intently. I wonder what he can smell. Oh, nice big yawn coming. So it's not necessarily that they aren't afraid or don't respect the Birmingham boys, but they're coming in here voicing their thoughts, and the only way to be sure of any of these theories that we hypothesize is actually just to wait and see, because we can never be sure what would happen. And on one day one of the coalitions may prove dominant, and on the next the others could have a lucky bout. James is also interested to know whether or not I think these guys are bigger and more powerful than the Birmingham males, and most certainly, James, I've touched on it a few times now, their manes are much larger than the Birmingham males, their bodies are bigger, they're older, more experienced, and not on the way out like the Madiba males. These guys are a little bit younger and are probably going to be willing to put up more of a fight against them. Obviously, numbers are stacked heavily in the Birmingham boys' favour, 5 against 2. But experience plays a big role out here, and also the size of their mane, because when they do get into a fight, these guys are going to have a lot better protection than the Birmingham males. And you may find that the blows being delivered by the Birmingham boys into these very big manes are going to be less effective as the blows that these boys could deliver to the Birmingham males. So it'll be interesting to see, and I hope we are in the right place at the right time to capture any interaction between these two males and the Birminghams, or any lion that they may come across, because that will be the ultimate answer to a lot of questions that we have been asking. Another thing that we haven't touched on yet this afternoon, I did touch on it briefly this morning though, is where their name would have originated from. And I'm not entirely sure. It's one of two places. There's a Seletis river, which could be the case, or the Seletis railway line, which is actually south of us in the Sabi Sands. So I'm not entirely sure exactly what the causes of them getting the name or who actually named them. A lot of the time the names are merely to help people differentiate different lion, and depending on the area they may have got a name because of the area that they moved in, or simply because of something to describe their habits or personalities, whether they're very aggressive or like a security force is one of the words, which is the Majingi lions, which I think is a word that basically means a security or an army, basically. So whether it's the name of an area that they spend time in, or something to do with their position or boldness or status, is kind of depends on the area where they get named. So I'm not too sure, and I'm not actually sure where they originated from. They have come from the north now, but where they were born, I don't have a clue. Well, I'm glad Itch from Pretoria is watching, because he has just brought up a good point, and he's suggesting that after the heavy rainfall we've got, possibly the scent of the other lions in this area, namely the Birmingham males, the Matimbas, the Nkuhumas, may have been washed away, and therefore these lions feel that they are in a safe area. I think it would certainly have an effect on how powerful the scent marks of the Birmingham males would be, but judging by their behavior this morning, the way this male we're looking at now sniffed up into a guarri bush and then scent marked on it, indicates to me that he was actually picking up old scent of other lion, and then he scent marked on top of that. So I'm fairly convinced that they can still pick up the scent mark of the other lion, but it is a very good theory. You can see the other male, he's also got his head up there, and yawning is a very good sign. I don't want to make a premature call here and say that they are going to get up and moving shortly, but yawning is a wonderful, wonderful indicator for us that they may be thinking about starting to move. Craig, where are you with that sighting? Copy, thanks, and confirm it's just 3 of them there. Copy, how far in? Okay, copy, thanks very much. Okay, well, some interesting news. The Nkuhuma Pride have been found, or at least 3 of them. They are to the east of us on Torchwood, and they are snacking on a warthog. So, unlucky warthog, but lucky lions. And those yawns that we saw earlier were an indicator that it was going to move. Sadly, not that far though, and just a little bit closer to the coalition partner. And it's great that we are spending a lot of time here, because we want them to get as relaxed with us as possible. And even though they are older lions, they still can be habituated, and it's by sitting patiently with them that will help relax them with the vehicles. So back to the injury that this one male has. Mischian in Texas is wondering if it's on his paw and whether it would have an impact on fighting. Well, so of course any injury is understandably going to have a degree of an impact on their ability to fight, but I don't think this individual's injury is on its paw. It seems higher up its old compared to that, but that's not to say that he can't hold his own. If he couldn't hold his own, he wouldn't still be around now. And that's kind of the bottom line, I guess, with a lot of animals. If you see them up and around and moving, even with a slight limp, they can still operate, they can still run quickly, they can still fight and fend for themselves. But of course, it's not going to be as well as an individual that doesn't have any injuries. So the extent to which I think he will not have power or be disadvantaged when fighting is hard to say, because we've hardly spent any time with him. But the injury isn't on his actual paw, it seems higher up, something possibly to do with his spine or something on the discs in his spine, maybe that kind of a pinched nerve that's creating a lack of blood flow and oxygen to that back left leg. I'm guessing that's a kind of likely injury that he may have picked up either maybe hunting buffalo or fighting with other lions. When lions do fight with one another, they, interestingly enough, often bite the rear end just above the spine, just above the tail, to try and paralyze their opponents. It's not that, it doesn't make sense to spend too much time around the throat and neck because there's sharp teeth and paws that can fling forward there. So lions will, once they've pinned down one of their opponents, will often attack just above the tail and bite into the spine there. So he could have acquired that injury years ago when he was still a youngster establishing his territory, or who knows, maybe he picked up this injury fairly recently with the pressure that they've been getting from the other males up in the north of the Manuletti. So I wonder what James is up to. I haven't heard any updates on the radio from him for a while, so let me get a hold of him and see if he is still alive. James for Scott. Are you okay out there? What's happening? Well, he said he's okay. That's all I got out of him. So I hope he's having a good afternoon. I'm not sure where he's looking or what he's looking for. For those of you who weren't on the sunrise safari, Madiba was around, a young male leopard. So hopefully he'll pop up and James will be able to sneak you guys in there for a visit. This morning he was perched high up on a termite mound, and apparently all that could be seen were the tips of his ears and a little bit of his forehead. So not the best visual, but at least they knew where he was, and that should make finding him this afternoon a bit easier. Well, happy to hear that a lot of you agree that these are incredibly beautiful and majestic lions. Kathy and Andre and a few others have mentioned that they've never seen lions with manes quite this dark, and they are wondering whether it's attributed to age or genetics, and it's attributed to both. You'll get old male lions with very small manes or very blonde manes, and others with very dark manes, but you don't ever get a very young lion with a big mane. So it's a combination of age, and generally manes start to develop at around 3 years of age, where you can really start to see them coming up as little mohawks, and anywhere from 5 years of age it'll be a full beard but not very long, and thereafter between 6, 7, 8 years old, like these males, they come into their prime. Anywhere older, 9, 10, 11, 12, you're going to start declining in strength and quality of any male lion generally, although their mane still could be quite big and shaggy at that age, but their bodies will start losing condition as they get a little bit older. So it's definitely fair to say that these lions have got great genetics in terms of having dark manes and dark coats. But it's hard to say exactly whether it's the direct genetics that have caused this, or a combination of good feeding and good upbringing. That will obviously also have a big impact on their current state and condition. And judging by their looks, they are in very good condition, so have probably been living a very healthy lifestyle. They don't also seem to be too scarred and battered, which I'm surprised about, but that may change in the coming weeks. Well, we've established that they're certainly big males, but Remay would like to know, how much do I think they weigh? And I don't have a clue, Remay. I've never seen a male lion being weighed, so I've got nothing to really go on other than the ages they get, or the sizes they give us in textbooks. And I would guess that they could weigh anywhere from 200 kilos upwards, so 400-pound animal, bigger than that actually, probably 440 pounds, but 200 kilos would be the kind of average weight of a big male lion, but they could be 20 kilos bigger than that or 20 kilos smaller than that. The only way to find out would be to weigh them, or to be around when one male lion is actually weighed, when they're doing some research on it, and then that would at least have something to go on for future measurements. But I've never been around in a scenario like that, so it would be impossible for me to make any kind of a calculated decision. Well, good news, James has found you guys some animals, so we're going to stay right here and hope that these males get active. But for now, you're going to jump across to James and see what he's got to find, or what he's found you.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Jigger. I've been driving around here like a headless chicken, clueless as to where the tracks are going. We've had some buffalo tracks here, we've had various reports of Madiba just to the north of us. The radio has been exploding in my ear, and basically I feel like taking a long drink and lying down under a tree. Obviously I'm not going to do that. We are going to try and find these buffalo, and if we don't find them, then we will go towards where Madiba was last seen. I believe the lions are now fast asleep, which of course is the thing that lions do best. Now I've read a fascinating thing the other day, that there is one animal, well there are probably a few, but not many, animal that sleeps more than a lion does, and that is the koala bear. The koala bear is able to be awake for only 2 hours of every day. The rest of the time it is fast asleep. So, not even our lions are that lazy. Now, I believe you were discussing how much you think those fellows weigh. I unfortunately haven't seen them in the flesh. I've seen the pictures, and I would say, you know, the average male lion around here, 180 to 200 kilograms, about 440 pounds at the big size, ranging from about 380 to 440 pounds. So they would probably be around about the average size, I think. I don't think they're necessarily particularly large ones. Anyway, so you can see as we drive along here evidence of buffalo, and by evidence I mean their dung all over the place. Their tracks are heading that way and that way, but I don't know where they are now. I was expecting to arrive here and be surrounded by them, but I have not been so far. So what we're going to do is just stop here and have a listen. I'm going to pull the earpiece out of my head so that the speaking on the Game Drive channel, oh, it's gone away, it's merciful. That's wonderful. Let us listen to nature briefly. They should be off in here somewhere. And there is nothing but a deathly silence, other than for the rattling or whistling of the wind. Okay, chaps, I think we're going to give up on these buffalo, not because I don't think we'll find them, but I think what we're going to do is head towards that leopard. He's not too far from here, and I think he's going into some thick stuff, and the other vehicles with him are those big cars, and I don't think they'll be able to keep up with him like we will in that little jigger. So let's go there and see if we can't get a space. Well, mainly because I think it's going to be a little bit easier. I'm not sure where these buffalo have gone. Taxon coming. Just going to get an update on the radio. Station in control of Madiba sighting. Copy, thanks. Confirm on Impala Road. Feeding males, 4 Majingalani males, 4 always males, 2 did I say Seletis males? No, 2 Sparta males. Then we've got 3 Styx Pride females. And we've got, what else have we got? 3 fixed pride females, 1 fixed pride pup, and then I think there are 13 in the Mungan pride. Now this is all to the south of us, of course, and another couple or another 4 in the Sparta pride. Salala pride's got 3. So that in the immediate area gives you a rough idea of how many lions there are. Now where is this leopard? Okay, he's just round the corner here. You see that, right? He's on a little termite mound. Here he seems to have found himself a little termite mound. Brian, I think you're going to try and film through this gap if you can. Alright. How's that? You see that, right? He's on a little termite mound. Hello. He's come down off the tower that he was on this morning and found something slightly less impressive, but he's obviously completely hidden in here, and I believe he was trying to chase a snake when they found him. History doesn't relate what happened to the serpent, but he now seems to be fast asleep. As I've said many times before, and I know for Scott it's a favourite thing of his to do, stopping to listen is an excellent way of finding animals. And so just to be here and spend a bit of time in the silence, trying to listen to perhaps the belch of a buffalo further to the south, the grunt of a lion maybe following them. We don't know where Junior is at the moment, and the other 2 Nkuhuma lionesses, we don't know where they are. I'll say, very kind of him not to get up and do something entertaining, but we'll just wait with him for a little while and see what he does, because I know that he has just started to move. And on a chilly day like today, if he's a little bit hungry, he'll move around quite a lot to find himself a little snack to eat. Alternatively, he could just sleep here for the next 4 hours. I do think it's hilarious that he is lying. I don't know if you can see it there, but he is, as for perhaps you're a new viewer, he does like to lie on termite mounds, he and his mother. And even though it doesn't look like it there, he's on a small termite mound. And this morning we found him on a huge towering termite mound about 3.5 to 4 meters off the ground. It was an enormous thing. And he's come down into this thicket, I suspect, to try and get away from the wind. So just to recap, for those of you who perhaps just joined us, Scott is still sitting with those 2, what we think are the Seletis males, and what many of you who have been watching for a long time and paying attention to the social media updates of various wildlife in this area, you have correctly, I think, identified them as the Seletis males. So they are 2 males that are around this area, and interestingly they were marking this morning, which is amazing behavior, especially in a territorial takeover, where the Birmingham boys are a threat to just about everyone here simply by weight of numbers. Then the 3 Nkuhuma lionesses who were harassing the buffalo herd around here yesterday, they are on Torchwood, which is to the east of us, and they have managed to find themselves a roast pork Sunday dinner. They didn't actually roast it at all, but it is definitely pork, and that's what they are busy happily doing on Torchwood to the east of us now. So that's the lion update. We don't know where Junior,
the 3.5-year-old male of the Nkuhuma Pride, and the other females are at this stage, but they will be probably around here, we think. Now, Jill in England, we've just been giving a bit of a lion update, and you want to know, were the lions successful yesterday with their kill? Jill, I think it's highly unlikely. They'd be greedier than any lion I'd ever seen if they were if they had eaten a buffalo last night and now they were having a roast pork dinner on torchwood. By pork, of course, I do mean warthog. I don't mean any other kind of pig. But no, Jill, I think you'll find that they were probably unsuccessful, and I think the reason for that you'll find, because the conditions were perfect. It was windy, there was a grey cloud all over the place, really good hunting conditions if you happen to be a lion, and not great if you're trying to defend a buffalo herd, but there are only 3 lionesses, and I think that definitely would have made a big difference to their success chances. They would have tried it on, probably. I think that for 3 lionesses, a buffalo herd is going to be a bit too much of a stretch. Normally, of course, when they do hunt buffalo, they do have the male with them. The young male, 3.5 years, he is, I mean, he's big, substantially stronger than the females. And they've also had 2 or 3 other females with them until the Birminghams decided that the something or other incurred their displeasure, and they killed off 2 or 3 of them. In fact, they've killed all 4 so far. So we have 2 flat cat sightings, but I think we're going to just sit here a little bit longer and see if things don't develop. Julia in Houston, you reckon you're seeing some sort of a swelling on his leg. I'm going to have a look with my powerful binoculars. Let me just retrieve them from their cover. Exceptional pair of binoculars that I have. We're just going to have a quick look and see. You say, is it possible that he was perhaps bitten by the snake? Julia, I definitely don't see any swelling. I don't think he's swelling at all. I think that's just the incredible musculature in the front paws of a leopard. Yeah, so I don't think that's an issue. I don't think he was bitten by a snake. I've seen leopards tangling with black mambas before, and they're just so fast that it's highly unlikely that a snake would be able to get hold of him. Remember, these leopards don't take risks. They're not like lions and hyenas, which are much more risk takers, and wild dogs to a certain extent, because they live in groups. If a leopard gets injured, of course, that's the end of that. They will eventually starve to death or fall to predation when they get weak. So they can't afford to take a huge number of risks. It's difficult to see through this vast swathe of bush behind which he is lying. Now, Diane and Jean, all the way from Los Angeles, in the west coast of the United States, you are postulating that perhaps he likes to lie upon termite mounds because of the warmth that comes out of them. Now, for those of you who don't know what on earth Diane and Jean are talking about, what it is that there's a huge amount of metabolic heat produced in a termite mound, because if you have 1 million termite mounds all there engaging in various metabolic processes, so heat is formed. Now, I think that's quite a good guess, except that I don't think that there are termites in this particular mound. So were this an active termite mound with lots of steamy chimneys coming out of it, I'd say you were absolutely correct. But this one I think is pretty much inactive. But certainly some of that, like that big tall one he was on today, maybe he was warming his nose over one of the chimneys, that spouts some of that beautiful metabolic heat from the termites. It's a lovely thing to stand on a cold morning over a termite mound and warm your hands over one of the chimneys. Once these other lot, you can hear the other vehicles moving. Once they've moved out, I think we will probably try and reposition. This little car is quite clever at getting into these areas, and we'll see if we can't get a slightly better look of this deeply sleeping cat. All around us, well, you can obviously of course hear the cars, but you won't hear much in the way of bird song. You can hear the wind blowing. There is a very sort of moist smell on the air that's born of these heavy clouds scudding overhead. And we did have, like I say, quite a few spatterings of rain today. Right, Brian, what we're going to try and do is just sneak forward around the side there. Okay, I mean, sneak is a relative term, of course. We're probably going to make the same noise as the marching 22nd Welsh Regiment, give or take the odd rev. Here we go. No, I made a mistake. Ephraim is not leaving. He's coming back in from the other side. But we are going to sneak slowly through here. You see how I'm sneaking, Brian? That's a terrible noise. I think I may be trying a little bit hard here. There we go. Don't worry, I'm okay. It's Brian you should worry about. The leopard is looking at me as though I'm stark raving insane. I don't blame him. Hello, fella. That's wonderful. Look at that wonderful little chap. Isn't he magnificent? There we go. Look at him contemplating life from the top of his little termite mound. I do wonder what on earth he thinks. He gets off his termite mound, someone spots him, and suddenly he's surrounded by vehicles for the rest of the afternoon. Now there's complete silence. Yeah, you probably heard somebody clicking as though they were trying to win the Grand National on horseback. That of course is not particularly becoming of a guest in the Kruger National Park. We'll try not to call the animals too much. And just a very interesting point being made, and I did make it this morning, and you know, we saw, and you will see later, weather allowing at the fireside chat, you will see some footage of Sindila, I've done it again, Brian, beat me over the head. Thank you. Mandela, not Mandela. I'll get back to you, everybody. I just need to compose myself. Right, this leopard's name is Madiba, not Mandela or Sindila. It is Madiba. Now, you will see some footage at the fireside chat of Madiba and his mother Shadow. And Shadow, of course, was hissing at him. Now, I think there was a lot of conflict over the food that they were eating. But at the same time, what's interesting is that when we last saw him, it was just around the Arathusa Dam, and he has moved an enormous distance without his mother. This is the furthest it would seem that he has moved without her. That's not to say that he's left her completely yet, but that kind of aggressive behavior between the two of them and the fact that he has moved this distance indicates that there is some sort of independence at play here, and that it's certainly very early for a young leopard like this to be trying to go independent. But maybe because his mother's pregnant, she might be pregnant, she's wanting to spend a little bit less time with him. And as you know, many of you know, we've been debating this for some time, it's possibly why she's lost so many litters of cubs before young Madiba. So quite interesting, the distance that he has moved in the last little while. As the crow flies, and we had a wonderful, if slightly sardonic question about whether crows fly straighter than any other kind of bird this morning, which certainly made me chuckle. Thank you for that. As the crow or vulture flies from here, Madiba is about, I'd say, 3 kilometers from where we last saw him, which was 2 nights ago at Arathusa Waterhole. So, quite interesting.
I wouldn't stay here in the middle of these trees without a friend.